Hello everybody, my name's Jen. I'm part of the Saturday Night Church and it's great to have the opportunity to share with you tonight. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? Have you ever felt out of control? Down by the repetitive nature of life and burnt out? Frustrated? Anxious? Do the demands of motherhood grind you down? Have you got deadline upon deadline that you struggle to reach? Does the to-do list just continue to get longer even though you're ticking things off? Has life been thrown into disarray by the lockdown situation? Well, if you have or can resonate to any of the things I say, then you are going to be able to resonate with a prophet in the Bible called Elijah. We're going to read a passage from the Bible from a book called 1 Kings, which is found in the Old Testament, 1 Kings 19. And whilst you're turning there, I want to give you a little bit of background about this guy, Elijah. So Elijah, he's a high capacity kind of guy. He's efficient, he works hard, he gets stuff done, he's called by God, and he's listening to God, and he's working right in the will of God. In one moment, he's defeating prophets and false gods and creating godly havoc. But then, in comes this threat to his own life. People threatening him. Little by little, in creeps a sense of burnout and a feeling of being overwhelmed. And this is what it says in the passage. It says, "But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die and said, 'It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers.'" And I just want us to pause straight away on that phrase, "It is enough." I can almost see Elijah in my thoughts. I can see him standing before God saying, "I can't do this anymore, God. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm sick of being in danger. I'm sick of people saying these things about me. I'm sick of you asking me to do things I don't want to do. I'm done." And honestly, it comes as quite a relief to me to read this in the Bible, because there are so many times that I myself have cried out to God and to my family or anyone who will listen, "It's enough." Let me explain a little bit about my own journey. I have a husband called Tim, a wonderful husband. I'm a mum to 2 young children. I'm an assistant head at a local primary school, and I am quite well acquainted with feeling a sense of overwhelm and anxiety in my own life. And consequently, I've become more and more passionate about sharing my thoughts, because just because these things are ever more common doesn't mean they have to be normal. Just because it's common for people to feel anxious doesn't mean it needs to be your normal. You see, I am quite an efficient person. I work fast, I get lots done. I'm somebody who thrives under a little bit of pressure, and I enjoy a fast-paced, intense life. Living life at 100 miles an hour is a set default for me, and I'm fueled by getting things done. But more and more, I've started to crash. And over the last decade, I have faced some significant moments of "it's enough," like Elijah. Post baby number 1, we relocated to Malvern, and I had nothing left. I was living from empty, out of the bottom of the barrel, and I had no joy. Tim, my husband, would come back from a day of work at his new job, and he'd want to cuddle up on the sofa and talk, and I just couldn't do it. Just another person who wanted something from me, and I've got nothing to give you. I've given everything away. And then there would be a text message from one of my dearest friends asking me just how I am. And that would weigh so heavy, because even the responsibility of replying felt too much for me. It really was an ugly time. And I struggled with this intense sense of failure. It was a very self-destructive place. And honestly, this feeling of being overwhelmed still creeps up on me time and time again, incrementally. It happens on a micro level often. And during this season of lockdown, I have certainly encountered feelings of being overwhelmed and burnt out. You see, we are often people that like to live to our limit, but we need a margin between our load which is what we have to do, and our limit, which is what we're capable of. Because if we constantly live in the red of the petrol tank, then there is only one step away from burnout. And I've started to notice patterns which tell me that I'm moving ever so close to that red zone, to that place of it is enough. And for me, it always starts with this overthinking and intrusive thought. My inner critic rears its ugly head. You're not good enough. That person doesn't like you. Do you remember when you said that? That person is going to hold that against you. Lots of that starts to happen. And I become tetchy and impatient with the needs of my children and husband beyond a normal level. I have a tendency, ironically, to take on more and more work because deeply rooted in my ability to become overwhelmed is this belief that my worth comes from what I do. And of course this isn't true, but when you're in that state, I take on more and more because I think if only I can do more, then I will be better. My worth comes from what I do. And then I just get crazy with losing things. I lose my keys, my purse, all the time. And these are key indicators. And the reason I share these things with you is because I want to encourage you at this point to spot your red flags. So when they start creeping in, you can deal with the feelings before it becomes a firefight whilst you're weeping on the kitchen floor. It's not a sustainable way to live, which is why I'm so glad that passage in 1 Kings doesn't end there. But if you return to that passage with me, it goes on to say, then as he lay and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. Then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he arose and ate and drank. This is the part of the passage where I get a deep sense that God cares hugely about us. And in the moments when we feel overwhelmed, he cares. Because you see, God didn't say to him, oh, Elijah, what's the fuss about? Get up. I've asked you to do something, now do it. He didn't doubt his faith or obedience. He didn't say that he was incompetent. But instead, he allowed him the time to sleep, to eat, and to drink. God is deeply concerned about our physical needs. So he led my thoughts from recognizing my feelings of being overwhelmed to then what I can do within them, learning from this passage in the Bible and from Elijah. And fundamentally, we need to prioritize rest and self-care. I recognise that so many of us are in the rush hour of our lives with motherhood and otherhood, physical load, emotional load taking over. And at this point of the passage, Elijah needed to have some time to rebuild and mend. He needed to prioritise self-care and his physical needs. Just like in the passage, there are moments in our life that require activity and energy. And then there are other moments when you need to prioritise rest and stillness. The best starting point for this is to ask yourself, what do I need? And check in with yourself. Is it rest? Is it time away from being needed? Is it a nourishing meal? Is it a hug? Is it breathing strategies to settle your nervous system? Is it a conversation with a loved friend? Is it a break from your own constant thoughts? You see, recently over this period of lockdown, I've worked out that what I need in order to break the cycle of that feeling of being overwhelmed is time every day, sometimes just for 1 minute, away from being needed. Away from Mum, Jen, Mrs. Alford, my emails pinging, my messages going, invitation to Zoom meetings. Mummy, after coronavirus, can we do this? All of the things that build and build. I need space away from being needed. I previously spent so many years under the illusion that self-care is selfish, but the truth is self-care isn't just good for me or the person with the burnout, but it's also super good for my husband and my kids and my job, because I am a better version of me when I have taken some time to refill my own tank and rest. I used to believe that I didn't have time for self-care, being so busy. But truthfully, that has become a bit of an excuse for me, because in some ways, I think I am busier than I actually am. And I realise at moments when that screen time alert comes up on my phone that many of the things I am doing to relax are not giving me true rest. You see, I am busy all the time and I am always doing something, but maybe what I'm doing isn't born out of necessity, and maybe there's a lot of wasted time that could be used for more life-giving pursuits. That pointless scroll through Facebook and Instagram is time wasted, and it steals more of our time than we want to admit, but could be redirected into activities that renew us and restore us. So just take a moment and think, what are your distractions? What is taking time from you that could be better directed, and how much time for replenishment could you free up if you removed some of the distractions in your life? Maybe for you it's online shopping or real life shopping or gaming or a binge of a trashy magazine or a Netflix series. Ultimately, I know that for me, my phone is robbing me of the time I need to do activities that actually replenish me. You know, I've started to enjoy running. I need time with my true friends. I need time to walk and to listen to podcasts. And crucially, I need to spend time with God, because that's where I find my rest. And that brings us nicely on to the next part of the story from the passage back there in 1 Kings. It goes on to say, then he said, go and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passes by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. And after the fire, a still, small voice. This final bit of scripture teaches us that God knew what an overwhelmed Elijah needed after self-care and physical restoring. He needed a personal encounter with God. And like many of us, we often think that an experience of God comes in a dramatic, earth-shattering way. But that wasn't his reality. God didn't come in the wind that tore down the mountains. God didn't come in the earthquake. And God didn't come in the fire. The drama came and went, and Elijah waited. And then, right at the end, he heard a still, small voice. A gentle whisper. It got me thinking, when do people whisper? Why do people whisper? It's a form of gentle communication. You can't hear a whisper amid noise. A whisper is intimate. It's a way to communicate. You can only hear it when you draw close to the one who is whispering. And that made me think God wants nothing more than for us to draw near and hear his whisper. And ultimately, this is where we find true rest, in the stillness, in the presence of God. That is where we find restoration and wholeness and healing and contentment. We can and we should identify other life-giving pursuits that restore us, but primarily rest comes in the presence of God. And you can't hear his whisper in the noise. So, here is my challenge for you this week. It's a 5x5 challenge. I want you to consider taking the next 5 days, 5 minutes away from technology and distraction, and in the stillness, listen for the gentle whisper of God. Just 5 minutes, just 5 days. For me, sitting in a room on my own in silence doesn't do that, because my thoughts play havoc with me. I need to go for a walk, or take some time away from the family home where I can really tune in. But I would love to know how you get on with that challenge. So do message us on any of these social media forums. And thank you so much for listening. Take care. I hope this has been helpful for you, and have a great week. Thank you. Bye.